Peter Walker, a quiet 70-year-old widower, arrived early at the fancy restaurant his son had chosen. He stood near the host's desk, trying not to feel out of place among the soft lights and polished floors. His old wool suit felt heavier than usual, the same suit he wore the day he buried his wife, Mary. The scent of garlic and expensive wine filled the air, reminding him he didn't belong in places like this anymore. He checked his old wristwatch, a gift from Mary on his 40th birthday. And when he saw his son rushing in 5 minutes late, he already sensed trouble. David, now 38, looked sharp in a tight new suit and an even tighter smile. He didn't hug his father. Instead, he scanned Peter's old suit with a flicker of embarrassment he failed to hide. "Dad, please, just be agreeable today," he whispered sharply. "Emily's family is very sophisticated. They're from Paris. Please don't talk about the old workshop or anything messy." Peter felt the sting, like a small and quiet slap, but he only nodded. "I will be on my best behavior, son." The restaurant doors opened, and Emily marched in with all the confidence of a queen. She was young, beautiful, polished, and wearing a black dress that cost more than Peter's monthly expenses. Her parents followed, Mark and Claire, both dressed like old European money with eyes sharp enough to slice through pride. Emily kissed Peter on both cheeks and called him Dad, all sweetness and charm in English. But when she turned to her parents and switched to French, her face changed. "My God," she murmured, "this old cow's son is perfect. I'll marry him for the green card." Peter froze inside, though his smile stayed gentle and harmless. French was the language of his late wife, Mary, the language of their love, arguments, and quiet mornings. Emily assumed he couldn't understand a word. She mocked his clothes, his age, his life. Claire laughed behind her napkin. Mark asked whether it was safe for someone like him to be part of their plan. Emily waved a hand. "He is clueless. We will take everything when the time is right." Peter lifted his water glass with a perfectly steady hand. They continued eating as if he were invisible, speaking freely in French about visas, money, and using David like a puppet. Emily bragged about marrying him for the green card, then divorcing him to take half of Peter's massive inheritance. Peter said nothing. He simply smiled when they looked his way, pretending to be the simple deaf old man they believed he was. But when dinner was over, he leaned in and whispered in flawless Parisian French, "I enjoyed meeting you. Immigration will enjoy this conversation too." Emily turned white as chalk. Emily stood frozen on the curb, her smile collapsing as Peter walked away without another word. David didn't notice anything strange. He was too busy thanking his father for behaving normally. But Emily's eyes never left Peter's back as he disappeared into the night. Her face was stiff with shock, fear, and something darker. She clutched her purse, trembling, realizing the man she mocked understood every word she said. And in that moment, Peter knew the war had only just begun. When Peter reached his small apartment, he didn't turn on the lights. He let the darkness settle as he stood quietly inside the doorway. The silence felt heavy, like the weight of Mary's memory resting on his shoulders. He walked slowly to the mantel and picked up her framed picture. "Did you hear them, my love?" he whispered. "They spoke filth in your language." His voice cracked softly, but his eyes were sharp. Something inside him had shifted, something old, strong, and dangerous. He went to his study and opened a drawer Mary never knew existed. Inside lay a sleek black phone, his private line, separate from the simple life David always saw. Peter had built a furniture company from nothing and sold it for $30 million, a secret Mary helped him protect. David had grown up believing his father was just a humble carpenter. Peter preferred it that way, believing hardship would build character. But now, looking at the glowing phone screen, he finally saw his mistake. He dialed the number of Ms. Riley, his attorney of 20 years. She answered on the second ring, her tone crisp and attentive. "Peter? This is early for you." Peter didn't waste time. "I need you," he said. "And I need your best private investigator." Riley heard the seriousness in his voice and didn't interrupt. "What's the target?" she asked. "A French woman named Emily," he replied. "I want everything. Her past, her family, her visa, her truth." Riley didn't breathe for a full moment. Then she said, "This sounds serious, Peter. What happened?" Peter looked at Mary's picture again, his jaw tightening. "They are here in my city," he said softly. "And they are trying to destroy my son." Riley's voice turned colder, sharper. "Then we'll find out who they really are." Peter lowered himself into his old chair, his heart calm for the first time all night. The battle lines had been drawn, and he was ready. The next morning, Peter woke before sunrise, the weight of his decision sitting calmly in his chest. He moved through his apartment with quiet purpose, no longer the confused Father David believed him to be. When the burner phone buzzed, he answered immediately. "Peter," Riley said, "my investigator, Thorne, will meet you today." Peter nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "Good," he replied. "It's time to stop pretending." At exactly 3 p.m., a sharp knock echoed through his apartment. Peter opened the door to find Thorne, a young man in a tailored suit, eyes colder than winter steel. "Mr. Walker," he said, "let's get started." He laid a sealed envelope on the oak desk. "Your future daughter-in-law is not who she claims to be." Peter felt a chill, but he didn't look away. "Show me." Thorne opened the first folder. Inside was Emily's entire U.S. immigration history. "She entered 6 months ago on a tourist visa," Thorne explained. "It expired 2 months ago." Peter stiffened. "So she's here illegally." Thorne nodded. "Desperate people make dangerous decisions. And she's extremely desperate." He slid another paper forward, an Interpol notice. "She's wanted for fraud in France." Peter stared at the red Interpol stamp, the accusation bold across the page. "She preys on older men," Thorne continued. 2 victims lost their entire savings. 1 died weeks later from the stress. Peter's jaw clenched, not in fear, but in a cold, controlled anger. "She sat across from me," he murmured. "Planning to do the same." Thorne nodded. "Yes. And she wasn't alone." Thorne opened the second folder. "Your son David," he said carefully, "isn't just struggling." Peter braced himself. "Go on." Thorne turned the pages toward him. Credit card statements, bank overdrafts, gambling sites. "He owes $150,000 to offshore betting companies." Peter closed his eyes. For a moment, he saw young David building a birdhouse with him in the workshop. But when he opened his eyes again, the man standing in front of him was different. Stronger. Harder. "So Emily needs a green card," Peter said slowly, "and David needs money." Thorne nodded. "They're using each other. And together, they plan to use you." Peter leaned back in his chair. The betrayal was deep, but it wasn't surprising anymore. "Thank you, Thorne," he said. "Leave the files with me." When he was alone again, Peter whispered, "Mary, they think they're hunting an old man." The next morning, David called early, sounding frantic. "Dad, what did you say to Emily?" "She cried all night." Peter feigned confusion. "Oh. I just tried some French, son. I guess I mixed up my words." David sighed in relief, believing exactly what he needed to believe. "Please don't do that again." Peter nodded softly. "Of course, son." Inside, a different man sharpened his resolve. 3 days later, Peter called David with a trembling, apologetic voice. "Son, can you and Emily come over? I want to help. I shouldn't have upset her." The bait was swallowed instantly. "Yes, Dad," David said. "We'll come tonight." When Peter hung up, he straightened his back. His eyes hardened. "They want a weak old man," he whispered. "Let them meet one." That evening, Emily and David arrived with none of their restaurant politeness. Emily didn't smile. David didn't hide his desperation. They entered the apartment like wolves entering a small, weak den. "Dad," David said, forcing a calm tone, "we need to talk about something important." Emily stepped forward, arms crossed. "We need $200,000. Now." Peter let his face fall in confusion. $200? David's mask cracked. "Dad, please. I'm in trouble. We need this for our future." Emily cut in sharply. "Stop pretending, Peter. Sell this apartment and give us the money." Peter's voice trembled just enough. "This is my home." Emily leaned in close, eyes burning. "Then sell it. Or we'll find another way to get it." Peter looked from her to his son, and saw no difference between them. Emily stepped closer, her voice turning sharp like broken glass. "You're old, Peter. You don't need this place." She waved her hand around the apartment. "We already had it appraised. It's worth at least $500,000. Peter's eyes widened just slightly, real surprise mixing with his act. They had already investigated him. "Sell it," Emily demanded. "Or you will regret it." Peter swallowed, trembling perfectly. "David, son, what is she saying?" David wouldn't meet his father's eyes. "Dad, she's right. We need to show immigration that I have assets. The apartment is the only way." Peter's voice cracked. "For a visa?" Emily shrugged coldly. "A green card requires stability. You standing in our way, that's the problem." David reached out, pleading. "Please, Dad. Don't ruin everything." Peter looked at him slowly, seeing not a son, but a stranger. Peter finally stood up, surprising them both. His voice was still gentle, still shaky. "My answer is no." The word echoed like a gunshot. Emily's face twisted instantly, fury replacing every fake smile. "What did you say?" she hissed. "No," Peter repeated. "This is my home. I'm not selling it." David's jaw tightened, turning red with panic. "Dad, don't do this. Please. You don't understand what's at stake." Emily stepped between them. "Enough," she shouted. "We are done asking nicely." She leaned in so close Peter could smell her perfume. "If you don't hand over the money, we will take it another way." David grabbed her arm nervously. "Emily, shut up," she snapped without looking at him. She stared at Peter with pure hatred. "You will give us what we're owed." Peter exhaled softly. "Get out of my house." David broke completely. "Dad, if you don't help us, I swear, I'll walk out that door and you'll never see me again." His voice cracked like a frightened child. "No grandchildren. No family. Nothing." Tears streamed down his cheeks. Emily rolled her eyes at his weakness. Peter looked at his son with calm sorrow. "If leaving me is that easy, David, then you were gone long before tonight." Peter walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped aside. "Please leave." Emily snarled, shoving David toward the hallway. "Fine. We'll do this the hard way." She pointed a shaking hand at Peter's chest. "You will regret crossing us, old man." David, sobbing, tried one last time. "Dad, please don't do this." "Go," Peter whispered. And he closed the door. For the next 24 hours, Peter lived in quiet alertness. Every sound in the hallway made him tense. He knew Emily wasn't finished. And he knew David was desperate enough to follow her lead. When the landline finally rang, his heart tightened. He picked it up slowly. Riley's voice came through, sharp and urgent. "Peter, they moved fast. They did something incredibly stupid." "What happened?" Peter asked. "They filed an emergency conservatorship petition," Riley said, her tone filled with disgust. "Your son is trying to have you declared mentally incompetent." Peter sat down heavily. "On what grounds?" Riley flipped through the papers. "They claim paranoid delusions, confusion, dangerous behavior, and they used that dinner as evidence." Peter closed his eyes. Emily's plan was unfolding. "They're claiming I'm insane?" Peter asked quietly. "Yes," Riley said. "They want full control of your person and estate." Peter looked around his simple apartment, the same space that once held laughter, dinners, and Mary's warmth. "So they're trying to take everything," he murmured. "Exactly," Riley replied. "But they made a mistake. A very big one." Peter's eyes opened slowly. "Tell me." "By filing this petition," Riley explained, "they dragged this into court. They opened the door for us to respond with everything we have: Thorne's investigation, the visa fraud, the Interpol notice, the recording." Peter let out a long breath. "So now, we fight on my battlefield." Riley's tone sharpened. "And Peter, if we do this right, we end this in one blow." Peter nodded. "Set the hearing." The next morning, Peter called David with the trembling voice of a defeated old man. "Son, I got the papers. I'm scared, David. I don't want to go to court." David sighed with relief, mistaking Peter's performance for surrender. "Dad, it's okay. Just sign the conservatorship. Emily and I will take care of everything." Peter let his voice crack. "I'll sign, son, but not here. I want to sign them at Ms. Riley's office." David hesitated, then smiled through the phone. "Perfect, Dad. Tomorrow at 10. Riley's conference room was cold, polished, and silent. Peter sat in his old wool suit, back slightly hunched, playing his role flawlessly. David and Emily entered like conquerors, smiling with arrogant triumph. Emily placed a hand on Peter's shoulder. "You're doing the right thing," she said sweetly. David added, "Dad, once you sign, everything will finally be calm." Peter gave a small, shaky nod. "Of course, son. I'm ready." "Before you sign," Riley said calmly, "let's clarify a few things." She opened the first folder. "David, you said you needed money for the wedding. But actually, you need $150,000 to cover gambling debt." David stiffened. "That's a lie," he shouted. Riley slid the documents across the table. "These statements say otherwise." Emily's head snapped toward David, her eyes narrowing dangerously. "Gambling," she whispered. "You liar." Riley didn't stop. She opened the second folder. "And Emily, you said your visa was processing in Paris." Emily straightened, lifting her chin. "Yes, it is." Riley tapped a stamped document. "No. Your tourist visa expired 62 days ago. You are in the U.S. illegally." The room went silent. Emily's breath caught as panic flashed across her face. David stared at her, confused. "Emily, what is she talking about?" Riley continued, voice flat as steel. "And finally, Emily, you're wanted by Interpol for fraud in France." She slid the red notice forward. Emily recoiled as if it burned. No, this is not." "It is," Riley cut in. "2 elderly victims. One died of a heart attack." David began to shake, unable to process the truth. Emily turned on him viciously. "You fool. You think you were my future? You were my escape." Peter finally stood up. He no longer looked weak. He no longer trembled. His voice came out clear and commanding. "Enough." Both of them froze. "You used me," Peter said to Emily. "You used my son. You plotted to steal everything." He turned to David. "And you tried to sell your own father for a debt you created." David's face crumpled. "Dad, please." "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," Peter said quietly. Riley pressed a button on the conference phone. A recording played, Emily's voice from the restaurant, smooth and cruel. "I'll marry him for the green card, then divorce him and take half of the old man's money." David's jaw dropped. Emily's face drained of color. The recording ended with a click that sounded like a door slamming shut on their future. David whispered, "Emily, you said you loved me." Emily didn't answer. She was already calculating escape routes. The glass door suddenly opened. 4 officers walked in, 2 detectives and 2 IC agents. Emily froze. One agent stepped forward. "Emily Brooks, you are under arrest for visa violations and suspected fraud." Emily backed away, shaking. No, this isn't happening." But they cuffed her wrists before she could take another step. David reached out helplessly. "Emily." She didn't even look at him as they dragged her out. A detective turned to David. "David Walker, you are under arrest for attempting to commit elder financial abuse and filing a fraudulent conservatorship petition." David stumbled backward. No. "Dad, please." The detective pulled his arms behind him. "You lied under oath. You tried to take your father's estate. You're responsible for this." David sobbed as the cuffs clicked shut. "Dad. Say something. Help me." Peter didn't move. "I warned you both," Peter said softly. His voice was calm, almost sad. "Family is built on truth, not greed." David collapsed in tears as the detectives led him away. Emily screamed as she was pulled down the hall. Riley stood beside Peter, her voice gentle. "It's over." Peter looked out the window as morning sunlight washed over the city. "No," he said. "Now, it truly begins." He walked out of the room stronger than he had been in years, ready to rebuild a life rooted in truth.